We're headed for the Stark Fontaine Caves, which is the cradle of civilization. I got you beat, man.
See, I'm not the only geek on the trip. Guess what? I have the same scrap.
There you go.
I have the same scrap.
All right. So I'll stop it for now.
Just waiting for everyone to move. Here, please, let's go to the cave. You can come back. So, feel free to get the opportunity to come back to look at our exhibition. Okay? But then, I was advised that after here, you guys are going to our main museum, known as Maropeng. So, this is a smaller version of our main museum. Yeah.
All right, great. So you see what it says.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Do you have the way to hook it up? Oh, I do.
Okay.
I do.
You probably need to be up front then.
Suck up camera, but let's see. Hold on. GoPro. Yeah. Oh, so it's too high. That's what we're seeing right now. Do a twist around. Got my GoPro. I'm ready. Absolutely.
Remember, what goes down must come up.
So I'm, checking it out while I go along.
So, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you guys this morning?
Fine.
Okay. So now, guys, my name is Tieti, and then I will be your guide for the next hour or so. So now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sterkfontein Caves. Now, as well as on behalf of our museum at Maropeng, we would like to officially welcome you to this place that is known as the Cradle of Humankind. So you'll understand that when we're talking about the Cradle of Humankind, we're not specifically talking about Sterkfontein Cave and then Maropeng only. We're talking about a huge area that covers about 53,000 hectares of land. So often our tourists, they get lost when they want to visit us in the Sterkfontein Cave. You know what they type? They type the Cradle of Humankind on their GPS. So the minute when you type the Cradle of Humankind on your GPS, you are lost. Okay? And then they don't like us saying that they were lost. We rather saying that they were busy exploring the rest of the Cradle of Humankind. Okay? So now within this area, the Cradle of Humankind, we have about 15 fossil sites or 15 caves. So the famous one, it is known as the Sterkfontein Caves. Okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is a physical tour. It's not the romantic rapid tour. So you'll see the reason why I'm so skinny as well. Okay, so now, ladies and gentlemen, from here to the entrance of the cave, we are expected to walk approximately 200 meters walk, and then from the entrance of the cave to the exit point, approximately 500 meters walk, and then going inside to the deepest point of that cave, which is 60 meters underground, we will be taking 129 stairs. Okay? Now on our way out, we will be facing 210 stairs. Okay, so feel free, ladies and gentlemen, they're not all at the same time. Okay, so but at some point, ladies and gentlemen, my job description will change. Okay, I'll no longer be your tour guide at some point, but then I'll be your personal trainer as well. Okay. So now another reason, ladies and gentlemen, we have some small narrow tunnels. They are meter by meter, but then after some few steps inside, they become wider and higher. Okay. And then there's a break in between. Remember, you guys are expected to bend for 25 meters. So we have 2 breaks in between. Okay. So now, just to be on the safe side, ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone suffering from asthma or claustrophobia?
You say arachnophobia? You mean there's spiders down there?
No, the snakes ate them.
Okay. So now on that note, ladies and gentlemen, along the way we have 15 engraved granite slabs. We're gonna only stop at 2 or 3 of those slabs. You guys can read them, and then wherever we stop, you can ask me questions regarding the previous slabs. So if you don't know whether you are asthmatic or claustrophobic, let's go and find out.
All right, let's go find out. We'll know at the end. Definitively. Uh-huh. All right. Yeah, we wouldn't have been able to put this together. Guess I'll stop.
So this will be our first stop. Okay. Now, you guys have any questions from the previous slips? Before we continue with this one? Nope. Nope. Okay. So now, ladies and gentlemen, this area, the Sterkfontein Cave, it is so famous simply because of it has produced 2 famous fossils known as Mrs. Place and then Little Fool. So now, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about Mrs. Place, we're talking about a skull that was found here in the Sterkfontein Cave in 1947 by Dr. Robert Broom and then his assistant, Professor John Robinson. So now here we have a reconstruction picture of Mrs. Place. So now when those scientists had a look on that skull, they believe that if Mrs. Place was alive today, she or he could have probably looked the same as you see on this engraved granite slab. And then the name as well, Mrs. Place, it is a nickname, ladies and gentlemen. So now this nickname, it was given by one of the famous newspapers in South Africa known as the Star newspaper. So now the Star newspaper, they were unable to pronounce this long scientific name known as Placeanthropus transvalensis, and then they cut it short to Place. Placeanthropus transvalensis, it is a Latin word, and then it simply means an almost human from the Transvaal. So now, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about the Transvaal region, we're talking about what is known as the Gauteng province now and in the Northwest province now. Back then, those 2 provinces were joined together and then they were known as the Transvaal region before 1994. Okay, so now I believe you guys have been asking yourself a question. Remember I said Placeanthropus transvalensis, it simply means an almost human from the Transvaal. So now, why did they say an almost human from the Transvaal, not saying a human from the Transvaal? It's because of the species name of Mrs. Place. By the way, our species name, it is known as Homo sapiens, okay? But in the species name of Mrs. Place, it is known as Australopithecus africanus. Now, Australopithecus africanus simply means southern apes of Africa. So Austro simply means South, Lopitica simply means ape man, Africana simply means Africa. By the way, Mrs. Place was half human, half ape, hence why earlier on they say an almost human from the Transvaal. Okay, now the skull of Mrs. Place dates back to 2.15 million years old. So now we're not saying that Mrs. Place has died at the age of 2.15 million years old. What we're simply saying is that Mrs. Place has lived here in the cradle of mankind 2.15 million years ago. Okay, so imagine if Mrs. Place would have died at the age of 2.15 million years old. Our government will be bankrupt, recovering Mrs. Place pension payout until a certain age. Okay, so now in 1947, technology was not more advanced compared to now. So it was so difficult for Dr. Robert Broom to determine the gender of the skull. For obvious reason is that after a fossil in 50,000 years old of existence, there is no DNA evidence from that fossil. That is older than 50,000 years old. Now the skull of Mrs. Place dates back to 2.15 million years old. So from that skull, there is no DNA evidence. Okay. So the question will be, what did Dr. Robert Broom studied in order for him to say that the skull of Mrs. Place represents a female? So imagine it is you found a skull and you want to determine the gender of that skull. What are you going to study? It will be difficult for you as well. Okay. So now Dr. Robert Broom, he simply studied the canine socket of that skull. Okay. Now the canine socket of that skull, they were small. Okay. Now since those canine sockets were small, he then said that the skull of Mrs. Place represents a female. Okay. Now later on in 2002, this skull was then restudied by another professor from the University of the Witwatersrand. It is known as WITS, based in Johannesburg. Now in 2002, technology was more advanced compared to 1947. He had used a CT scanner, sometimes it is known as an X-ray. Now remember that CT scanner revealed hidden features that you cannot see on your naked eyes. From that moment, the canine socket of Mrs. Place were not small, they were big. Okay, so which means when they are big, what's going on?
It's a male.
It's a male. So now, ladies and gentlemen, here's a piece of advice. Okay, if it happened that you found a skull and you want to determine a gender of a skull, don't hesitate. You simply study the eyebrow ridges, glabellar bone, this hilly part, and then the cheekbones. If you want to determine a gender of a skull, eyebrow ridges, glabellar bone, and then cheekbones. Now, once those bones are flat, you must know that you are a female. When they are prominent or projected forward, you are a male. So for now, they believe that the skull of Mrs. Place could represent a male simply because of those features. But in the fact of the matter is that they're still debating about the gender of Mrs. Place, hence why the name won't change to Mr. Place anytime soon. So majority of the scientists, they say that Mrs. Place represents a male. Minority of those scientists say that Mrs. Place represents a female. So on a democratic country, you know majority rules. Okay? So I normally say that Mrs. Place, it is a boy. Why a boy? Is because of the wisdom teeth of Mrs. Place were still developing. Okay. Now remember, when you have 32 teeth in possession, which means you are in adult. When they still develop, you still an adolescent. Hence why I said Mrs. Place, it is a boy. So before Mrs. Place died, they believed that she was between the age of 12 to 14. Now the original skull of Mrs. Place, it is kept at our museum known as the Transvaal, formerly known as the Transvaal Museum, but then for now it is known as the Ditong Museum in Pretoria. So here in the Cradle of Humankind, we only have replicas of Mrs. Place. Any questions? All good?
How good?
Are you guys curious about the cave?
Yes. Let's go to the cave.
At some point I'll be your personal trainer and you guys are physically fit. Okay? So now so now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And then before we wrap up, the bust of that gentleman down there, it is the bust of Professor Philip Valentine Tobias. The gentleman has worked here in the Cradle of Humankind for 50 years looking for fossils. Ever since the gentleman has worked here, he have discovered more than 1,600 fossils. So he was also the head of the anatomy department at Wits University, and then he died not so long ago in 2012, and then he died at the age of 86. He was approaching 87, but then he died at the age of 86. He died single as well. Not singing, single, which means no wife, no children. And for those who are married, please don't feel guilty. I'm just saying he died. And then he died at the age of 86. So,
Need to come out and meet the women.
So now, ladies and gentlemen, this bust here is a bust of Dr. Wetrum, the one who came here in South Africa as a medical doctor, but he was more interested in paleoanthropology, the one who found the skull of his place. Okay? So he has worked here for a long period as well, but he has worked here under the Transvaal Museum where there was now skull of Mrs. Place in his cave. Okay? So he died at the age of 85. Can you see that sequence? The advantage of working in the caves.
Live to 80.
85, and then that one 86.
Yes.
So since I'm also working in the Sterkfontein caves as well, do I stand a good chance maybe to die at the age of 86?
There you go. Yeah.
But will you get married?
Yeah.
Definitely yes, eh? Okay. So now, ladies and gentlemen, this shiny nose and this shiny hand, by rubbing the nose, which means you wishing yourself a good luck, the hand is for wisdom. Not just any hand, but in the left hand. Is it true that people who are smart, they are left-handed?
Yeah.
It sure is.
Oh, not like us, those who are using the right-handed. Okay. So you rub the nose for wishing yourself a good luck. The hand is for wisdom. So you're not allowed to touch them both. If you touch them both by mistake, I can give you a second option as well because you guys are so nice on my talk. But then the second option will be going back to the lake alone, wash your head, and then come back into the otherwise you go home in the backline. So now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the tour. I hope you found this tour more informative. And then those who are going to Maropeng, I hope that my counterpart will do the very same thing that I did, if the tour was more informative as well. So up the stairs, ladies and gentlemen, you turn left or right, okay? Turning left, you'll be able to see where the skull of this place was found. Turning right, you'll see the entrance of the cave as well as those 15 engraved granite slabs. Turning right, it is a shortcut. Left, long way to Kilo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Hey, Kim, I'm going to leave a tip. There's a tip jar.